Hello again and welcome to our fall edition of Cook the Book here on YouTube. This is Valerie, I'm Tina. We're here seasonally to talk about some fun fiction books, some cookbooks, some nonfiction. You never know what we're going to find inspiration for Cook the Book. So, being that it's October and a little bit of spooky season, we decided to talk about a psychological thriller, talk about a really cool new cookbook that the library has, and then move on into some fun spooky desserts. For our fiction book, it's The Orphanage by the Lake by Daniel G. Miller. If you're a fan of John Mars, Frida McFadden, Leslie Wolfe, you would like The Orphanage by the Lake. It focuses on a private investigator, Hazel, who she's in her 30s, her life has not gone as expected, her business is on the brink of failure, and she just is really not sure what to do with herself. And she gets contacted by a mysterious socialite with a lot of money who wants the case of a missing girl who disappeared at the orphanage by the lake solved. And it's more money than Hazel's ever had in her life, and she's determined to take the case and find out what's going on at the orphanage. The orphanage has been in this community for decades, and when she starts digging, there's a lot more to the story than she ever expected. Problems that go back since the beginning of the orphanage decades ago. Lots of missing girls, and she's on a crunch to solve the case by the deadline that this wealthy socialite has given her. It's very intriguing. I didn't see the end coming. It is a quick read, and I'm always sucked in by a good cover.
I am too.
This is a good cover. You can just imagine that orphanage by the lake. And I'm a quote person, and one of the quotes I love from the book is, people think that we're defined by the big moments in our lives, births, deaths, successes, and failures, but I think the little moments matter more because those are the moments that shape your self-perception and who you want to become. So I thought that that was really awesome. So if you're looking for a spooky psychological thriller, this may be one you want to check out. We also recently have gotten this amazing book, Food to Die For. First of all, the cover in itself is so cool. It's by Amy Bruni. It goes through different spooky places and involves the history of that. It tells you a little bit about it, the background of it, and a recipe that's inspired by that. Oftentimes it's a recipe that actually comes from the very place that it's talking about. For instance, the Seeley Rose House in Lucas, Ohio. It gives the background of it and then gives us a recipe that was actually used there. This is smear case, which is the Pennsylvania Dutch term for cottage cheese. So this is their actual recipe for cottage cheese. And I know you're thinking like, I'm not gonna make my own cottage cheese. That's okay. It's still fun to read the history of all of it.
It really is.
Here's one on the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio, which if you live in Central Ohio, you're well versed on the Ohio State Reformatory and its tortured past and haunted past. The recipe from it is French fruit sandwiches, which actually is a recipe that was adapted from a book of recipes that was put together by the warden's wife in the 1930s. And there's a number of recipes in here that actually you probably think you would like to make. But even for the recipes that you think, oh, that's just not for me, it's so interesting to read the history. The pictures are great, and you might find a little bit of the background that you didn't know before. So we're moving on to our spooky treat that we're gonna make.
Okay. Well, this treat, as we talked about, just seemed kind of fun because Pop Tarts seem to be pretty popular right now, and the homemade ones especially. And I saw the other day this recipe for homemade Pop Tarts, but in the shape of a ghost. So I thought it fit our theme, and it was perfect. And these are super simple to make. So you just get refrigerated pie dough. You can go to your grocery store, get whatever kind you like. Whatever kind works for you. So just the refrigerated kind, and then you'll just take it out of the package. And then just unroll it. Sometimes you have to let it just get to room temperature a little bit so it doesn't break, because sometimes they'll do that. All right, let's do that. Okay, and those pie crusts, When you get them from the store, the thickness that they come in is fine. You shouldn't have to roll it out anymore or anything like that. And it should be good to go. So we have our pie crust here. So the filling for this, we did brown sugar cinnamon. The filling for this is really simple, and I looked at several different ones, and this one I liked the best because it had somewhat of a thickener in it. Flour. So for the filling, it's a 3/4 cup dark brown sugar, 2 tablespoons melted salted butter, because that salt just kind of helps the flavor a little bit. 1 tablespoon all-purpose flour, and 2 teaspoons ground cinnamon. So very simple filling, but very good filling. So you just mix all the sugar, the cinnamon, the flour together. And I just used a fork to mix it up because that just gets everything all mixed together. And then you put your 2 tablespoons of melted butter in there and just stir it around until it's all mixed together. So it'll look like that. It'll be kind of crumbly. So that will be your filling. I found that it made a little more than I needed. So you'll have extra. So if you have extra pie dough, you can make extra Pop-Tarts.
Or let's be honest, get a spoon. Just
get a spoon, that's right. Exactly. Okay. So this will be our little ghosty cookie cutter. And that's all I use, just a regular cookie cutter. I'm using a baking mat to put this on. Just be careful if you do use a baking mat not to cut through your baking mat, which I've done before. All right.
And if you didn't have a ghost, but still wanted the concept of the little Pop-Tarts, you really could even cut it with a knife.
Oh,
or,
you definitely could.
Any type of cookie cutter you have.
Yes, for sure. You're going to want to cut out an even amount. So, so you have enough for your top and your bottom piece. So they'll just look like that. And then what I do is I just kind of set them around, so by 2s, because that way I know what I have. A couple more here. Oops. And it depends how big your dough is, or if you roll it out a little bit more, but I would say you could probably get 6 out of them. At the minimum 4 pieces, so you could get 2 Pop-Tarts, but you can always roll it up. Like squish it up and then roll it out again to get more. So that's kind of helpful. Let's see how many we'll get out of this one here. And then what you can do too, if you do have to roll it back up, I would suggest just putting it in the refrigerator for a few minutes and letting it get cold again.
To make it easier to handle.
Yeah. I'm gonna set this over there. Thank you.
And of course, at the library, we have just zillions of amazing baking books. We have so many of the new ones, a lot of the older classic ones, and oftentimes that's where you find the best recipes.
Right.
Yes. Especially for recipes that are a little more common, where you often have all the ingredients already at home. Sometimes the older cookbooks are the best.
Yeah.
And if you want to experiment with doing your own pie crust, oh my gosh, some of the older Betty Crocker books or ones like that would have amazing true blue homemade pie crusts.
Right, and really making your own pie crust isn't hard. But if you do, my suggestion would be get a pie dough maker. Now I can't think of the name of it.
A blender, a pastry blender?
Yes, thank you.
Pastry blender.
Yeah, because that's going to help you. Because a lot of times they'll say you can use 2 forks, which I've done before, but it takes forever and it's really a little more difficult. And pastry blenders come in all price ranges.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely recommend one of those if you want to make your own. Okay, so to make the ghosts, you'll also want a straw, just a small, like not like a milkshake straw or anything, but just one of the small ones, because you're going to use this for your eyes and your mouth. And you only want to put that on one side of it. So let's see.
And just to show you this is what we're going for.
Yeah. Yep.
So
And then
your
your dough will look like this with the little eyes and the mouth in it. So, So the next thing you want to do is get some egg wash, which is just 1 egg and a tablespoon of water. And you just mix that. You can mix with a fork, but that's just going to help you be able to seal your top to the bottom. And I think it just kind of helps your mix or your filling stick to it a little bit. So just paint that on.
Okay, so we're putting that on the solid one, not
Yeah,
the
on
one
the solid one, not
yeah.
the one with the eyes.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, you don't want to put it on that one. All right, paint that. And I put it completely like over the whole bottom, paint the whole little ghost. And then this is about 1.5 teaspoons cookie dough scoop. And I just use that for my filling just to give it a measure so I know. And you don't have to pack it in there really tightly just because your little ghost won't take that much filling. So then just scooch it around. So it's kind of in the shape of your ghost. And I just put it down the center. So, and I don't worry about the hands or anything because they're so tiny and it's gonna bake together and it would be hard to, I mean, if you want to, go for it, try it.
But I would think it would seal better with keeping it away from all the edges.
Yeah, you definitely want to leave an edge on there because what we're going to do once we put the top on, I'll show you, we're going to crimp the edges so the filling stays where it should. So we'll put the top on and kind of, I poke it down a little bit just so it'll kind of stay before I use the fork to then just crimp the edges. And all that is just pressing the top into the bottom.
Which makes it truly look like a Pop-Tart.
It does.
And for me, brown sugar cinnamon always is the best Pop-Tart.
That's my favorite. I've tried others, and I would say like if I have to have a fruit one, it would be cherry or strawberry. But yeah, brown sugar cinnamon is always my go-to. Whatever has sugar, you know.
Well, that too.
All right. So then you crimp all around, and I get around the little hands. I shape, when I crimped it, I shaped around the hands. You could probably just go around and do it if you didn't want to take the time. So your little Pop-Tart will look like this.
So cute.
So then just line them up on a tray. And then what I do is I either put them in the refrigerator or the freezer while my oven heats up. So let's just say about 15 minutes. Your oven might not take 15 minutes. But I would leave them in there and that way the dough gets cold again. And when you take them out, before you put them in the oven, brush them with your egg wash again. And then bake them. And we do 375 for about 15 to 20 minutes. I think mine took about 16 to 17 minutes. And then once they come out, let them cool a little bit, and then you'll put your icing on them. The best part.
Of course.
You gotta have icing on Pop-Tarts. You cannot have Pop-Tarts without icing. But this will be your icing. It's a cinnamon glaze. And I made this, the glaze is pretty easy. It's just powdered sugar. This has powdered sugar, half and half, and vanilla in it. Pretty easy to do. And
what consistency are we going for?
The best consistency that I can think of is like a thick honey.
Okay.
So it'll look a little bit like,
yes.
So kind of like, because you don't want it too thin, because when you're frosting your Pop-Tarts, if it's too thin, it'll all go off the edges. If you like just a very thin glaze, you know, do it however is best works for you and your taste. So
yes, and again, they look so cute when they're finished. And they really look like a lot more work than they actually are.
Yeah.
So fun. And again, as we often say, if you're someone who likes to have your kids help you, or if they have friends over, or this would be a fun Halloween party thing to do together.
It definitely would. And if you wanted to do something like that, you could even have your kids help you earlier in the day make up the brown sugar filling. And you guys can make the frosting and then just have the pie dough all ready. And even if you didn't want to do ghosts and want to do another shape, even like a square or rectangle, I would recommend getting a cookie cutter because it saves a lot of time. did it the first time I tried these. I did it measuring it with a knife and then a pizza cutter and cut the dough, and that took forever.
Yeah.
They were really good, but took forever.
Uh-huh.
So definitely cookie cutter is the way to go.
Yes, very good. And that way, especially if you're dealing with kids, they'd be all the same size.
Yes.
Because we don't want anyone having a bigger one than anyone else, because tragedy.
Every time.
Every time. Oh my
So.
gosh. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this month's Cook the Book. We hope you have an enjoyable spooky season. And remember, lots of awesome books here at the library. And if you're not from Central Ohio, check out Libby. Libby, lots of cookbooks and anything else you can imagine on Libby, or go to your local library to see what they have to offer. We'll see you next time.